In this video, we're going to cover some of the sales tax reporting processes in Lizzy. To get started, we're going to go to Settings, General, and then Tax Reports to show you something that you can use if you have a lot of different cities or locations that you're having to report taxes in. By default, you're going to have a generic tax report, and it includes everything. And it really, to be clear here, these tax reports are not changing the actual numbers that show up on the report. It's just giving you the ability to set up so that one report only shows Ohio taxes, for example, and another report only shows Georgia taxes. So it gives you a way to kind of limit which taxes show up on the different reports. So it has nothing to do with the numbers, only the certain tax rates that show up on the report when you run it. So as an example, by default, every tax rate that you have in your system is going to show up on the tax report. But if you want to limit it, you're going to come over here to, again, Settings, General, Tax Reports, and you're going to either create a report. So to create a report, we'll just say that we're going to run it like a generic tax report, and then we're going to name it whatever it is that we want to name. And you'll notice that when I pick General Tax Report by default, it highlights everything that's in the list down here. So the system, at that point, what you're going to do is you're going to come in and uncheck the things that you don't want to show up, and then you're going to save it. Now, as an example, if I edit the Ohio taxes, then I have my name and the tax report that I chose to look at, and then on this report I'm showing exempt taxes and city tax. If I look at the other taxes, then I'm only showing city tax. So it's really just gives you a way to limit what shows up on the report. Now, to run the report, we're going to go to Reports, we're going to go to Invoicing, and then you'll see Sales Tax Report. So we're just going to run the Sales Tax Report. Now, what I want to do is I'm always paying taxes from the previous month or quarter, depending on whatever the situation is in your state. So I'm going to use this drop list to tell it that I want to look at last month. So we're going to choose last month. It'll set up everything for me. Now, there are some options here that you can look at. Now, by default, we're looking at invoiced amounts, and this is generally what everybody does. You do have the ability to tell it to run off of account or collected amounts. If that's something you do, we have to turn that on manually for you. So that's something that you'd have to get with us. And again, very few dealers actually do that. Now, the next thing we have is our location drop list. So if we have multiple locations, I do have the ability to tell it to only run the taxes on a particular location. And then we've got which report to generate. Now, this is where those limiting things come into play. So if I were to pick Universal Report here, it's going to show me every single thing for every tax rate that we've collected taxes on. If I choose Ohio, if you remember, it's only going to show the couple tax rates that were selected for the Ohio selection. So that's how you would pick the reports that you actually have chosen. You do have a drop list up here to run previous reports. So once you pay, and I'm going to show you how to do that in this video, but once you pay, whatever got paid on that particular report will actually show up here in the drop list. Now, this is something that confuses people a lot, but it's something that's fairly straightforward. If you tell the system to run a snapshot and you choose this checkbox, then what is going to happen is Lizzy is only going to look at taxes between these dates, whether they've been paid or not. She's just going to go look at whatever was collected between those dates. So if someone were to backdate a invoice and it went into, say, April, you're not going to see it when you're running this because the system is literally only looking between these particular dates. When you're not in snapshot, which is the default, you will see everything that has not been paid between these dates and anything that has not been paid prior to these dates, so that any backdated invoices will actually get sucked up in this report. Now, if that happens, they're going to actually, those lines will be color-coded yellow to let you know that there's prior period entries in there, and you can open up detail and see which invoice it is that got backdated. But the default action here is to not use a snapshot. There really is very few situations where you need to use a snapshot, but it's there in case you just want to look straight out what got taxed that particular month. The next thing is whether we want to show all taxes. Well, okay, so the next thing is actually ignore already paid invoices. So again, by default, we are not in a snapshot view, and we are ignoring any paid invoices in prior periods. So it basically just looks at only the things that have not been paid, again, in this period or before. The next thing is whether we want to show all taxes. So this option actually allows you to turn on taxes that you may have collected that aren't on the report that you want, but you want to show them all for this particular run. And then some states have stipulations that, like Florida, I think if you're over $1,000 or over $5,000 invoice, then you have the ability to break those out separate. And then we've got show trade-in totals. This is something that Tennessee has to report on, so it breaks out a separate total. By default, the system is going to just run your sales tax. These items here are for specific states that have requirements where they have to have additional totals, where it'll break things out and give you the additional totals that you're looking for. So I'm not going to go into every single one of these options. If you're in a state that needs a particular reporting, then you're probably going to know what these mean anyway. But we're just going to go ahead and generate the report. Now, as long as we have the report, the snapshot turned off, you're going to have the ability to pay the taxes. And this is something that you have to do every month. Lizzy will actually write the check or send it to a purchase order for you, whatever it is that you're wanting to do, from here. And it keeps that check, that debit entry, all tied to the taxes that paid it. And it also, again, puts an entry into your past runs so that you can go back and rerun that particular report. Now, looking down here, we've got a grid of a bunch of taxes. We're in a demo database, so these are obviously not very realistic, but you'll notice a bunch of yellow lines. And if you look up here, you've got information about what that yellow line means. It's telling you that there's taxes that are in a prior period, which means I'm running this for last month, and there's taxes that are in here that are from a prior month. So they may have been from April or March or some other month. If you click the plus sign, it'll actually open up the detail for that particular thing and show you all of the taxes that were included in that particular number. So the system is giving you the numbers, and it's also giving you the detail if you need it to be able to open up and see what's going on with that particular tax rate. Now, once you're done, you've looked at this, everything looks okay, and we're ready to actually pay the sales tax. We're going to come back up here to the top, and we're going to click this pay sales tax from this report. When we do this, it's going to open up the control to actually pay the different sales taxes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and we're going to select that we're going to pay these 3 sales taxes. These are the only 3 that I want to pay right now. So we can break this thing into one big payment, or we can pay them individually. We can do whatever it is that we want to do. We also have a check all button to just check everything on the page, but those are the only 3 that I want to pay. And then we're going to come down here to the bottom, and we're going to enter in any adjustments that we may need to have. So if we're going to adjust the thing up, then we're going to use this guy. We're going to pick our account that we want to use, and then we're going to put in the amount. If we're going to adjust it down, we're going to enter discount information. Then we're going to pick the discount account, put in the amount. These are our prepaid tax fields that we have here. So this is a prepaid tax that got entered from last month that we can use in addition to helping pay for this month's tax bill. And then we've got our estimate to pay for this month that we can enter an estimate to pay. Now, down here at the bottom, we have whether we're going to write an EFT, which is generally what is happening, or we can send it to a payable if we want to pay it later. There really is, in the situation of, and in the fact that there could be backdated invoices that come into play, we don't recommend actually running this report and paying the taxes until you're actually paying the taxes. So in other words, if I'm going to pay the taxes today, then I would go in and run the report today and pay the taxes and process them off of here. That way the report actually gets all of the backdated taxes and it pays them as soon as you can. And then when you're doing that, because we're paying it right now, we're going to go ahead and tell it to write an EFT, which is going to put an entry in your bank account saying that you electronically deposited this money to the government for those tax rates. So down here at the bottom, you can see the total amount that we're going to be paying, and all we're going to do is select to process the payment. When you do that, the system is going to go out, and again, we're in demo data, so this is not, there's all kinds of problems in here to try to process this, but it'll go through and close this control, and it'll put you back over here, and you'll see the entry that you had just created in this drop list. Now, you will have to go back over here and select the tax report again to get it to actually show up when you do that, but this list grows as you pay more and more taxes.